5 signs you're becoming a friend of God. Here's how you know. Let me say this plainly, because it may unsettle you in the best possible way. Not everyone who believes in God is a friend of God. Many obey Him, many fear Him, many worship Him, but friendship, that is rare. Jesus Himself said, "I no longer call you servants. Instead, I have called you friends." That sentence alone should stop us, because servants follow orders, but friends are trusted with the heart. Some of you listening right now feel a quiet distance growing between you and the crowd. Your faith no longer feels performative. The noise is fading, the applause no longer satisfies. And you wonder, why does following God feel lonelier, deeper, heavier than before? It may not be distance, it may be invitation. Abraham was called the friend of God, not because he was perfect, but because he trusted God without guarantees. Moses spoke with God face to face, as a man speaks with his friend. David wasn't chosen for his resume, but for his heart. Friendship with God is not for the spiritually curious, it is for the surrendered. And if these signs are appearing in your life, you're not drifting. You're being drawn closer than most ever go. Listen carefully. These signs are not comfortable, but they are holy. Number 1, you're no longer motivated by reward or fear. Here is the first sign you are becoming a friend of God. You stop negotiating. You obey even when there is no visible reward. You stay faithful even when nothing improves immediately. You pray not to get something, but because you trust someone. Early faith often asks, "If I obey, will you bless me?" Friendship says, "Even if you don't, I will still follow you." Abraham did not ask God for a roadmap. He left familiarity without explanation. Hebrews says he went not knowing where he was going. That is not blind faith. That is trust born of relationship. Friends do not obey out of fear of punishment. They obey out of confidence in character. Some of you used to be motivated by outcomes, blessings, doors opening, breakthroughs. Now, even when prayers are delayed, something inside you remains steady. You are no longer chasing God's hand. You are anchored to His heart. Jesus in Gethsemane is the clearest picture of this maturity. "Not my will, but yours be done." That is not the prayer of a servant hoping for reward. That is the surrender of a son who trusts the Father completely. And here is the uncomfortable truth. God does not reveal His deepest plans to those who bargain. He reveals Himself to those who trust Him without leverage. If your obedience has become quiet, if your faith has become steady without applause, if your loyalty no longer depends on outcomes, you are not losing passion. You are gaining intimacy, and intimacy is where friendship begins. Number 2, God trusts you with silence and delay. God goes quiet and you don't walk away. This is where many believers get confused. They assume silence means abandonment. They panic when the emotions fade. They think God has left because the voice they were used to hearing is no longer loud. But listen to me carefully. Silence is not absence. Silence is often trust. When faith is immature, God speaks constantly through signs, feelings, confirmations, reassurance after reassurance. But when trust deepens, God speaks less because He knows you will stay. Friends don't need constant explanations. Think about it. When someone truly trusts you, you don't have to justify every move. You don't have to narrate your intentions. The relationship can breathe. The Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." Not be anxious, not figure it out. Be still. Some of you are in a season where heaven feels quiet, no new instructions, no emotional highs, no dramatic confirmations, and yet something inside you refuses to leave. You're not angry. You're not offended. You're waiting. That is not weakness. That is maturity. God trusted Abraham with silence for years after the promise. He trusted Joseph with silence in the prison. He trusted Jesus with silence on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? And yet Jesus did not abandon obedience. Silence reveals motive. Servants need instructions. Friends understand direction even when words stop. If you are still praying without urgency, still obeying without clarity, still trusting without reassurance, it means God believes you will not run when He does not explain Himself. And that level of trust is not given lightly. Most people say they want intimacy with God, but few are willing to endure the quiet that comes with it. Silence strips away emotional dependency and leaves only relationship. You are learning to recognize God without hearing Him speak, and that is not distance. That is depth. Because when God knows you will remain faithful without constant confirmation, He knows He can trust you with His heart, and friends are trusted with silence. Number 3, your private life matters more than your public image. Your hidden life starts to matter more than how you appear to others. At some point, something shifts inside you. You stop needing to look spiritual. You stop trying to sound deep. You stop performing faith for approval. The stage loses its shine. The crowd's opinion loses its weight. Jesus warned about this plainly. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. Why? Because friendship with God cannot survive on display. Friends care about honesty more than image. Some of you used to measure your faith by visibility. How much you served, how strong you sounded, how others perceived your walk with God. But now, conviction meets you in private. God deals with you in quiet places. Your obedience happens when no one is watching. And here is the truth most people don't like to hear. God often chooses secrecy before He chooses significance. David learned to worship in fields before he ever touched a throne. Moses was shaped in the wilderness long before he stood before Pharaoh. Jesus lived 30 years unseen before 3 years of ministry. Friendship with God grows in the unseen. You start caring about thoughts no one hears, motives no one can judge, attitudes that never reach the surface. And when God corrects you, He does it privately because He trusts you enough not to expose you publicly. That alone is a sign of intimacy. Public spirituality is easy to fake. Private obedience is not. Some of you are walking away from things no one knows you struggle with. You are choosing integrity without applause. You are saying no when it costs you nothing socially, but everything spiritually. And that is where God meets friends. Jesus said, when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. Not because God avoids crowds, but because relationship deepens in privacy. If your faith has become quieter, if your convictions have become deeper, if you care more about who you are before God than who you appear to be before people, you're not shrinking. You are being refined because God does not share His heart with performers. He shares it with those who are real when no one is watching. And friendship with God always begins in the secret place. Number 4, God corrects you directly and personally. God corrects you before others ever need to. When intimacy deepens, discipline changes. God no longer relies on external pressure to get your attention. He speaks to your spirit quickly, quietly, and precisely. A thought, a check in your heart, a sudden unease that won't let you continue. The Bible says, "For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, not the one he is distant from, the one he loves." Friends don't need public correction. They respond to a whisper. Some of you know exactly what this feels like. You start to say something, and something inside you stops you. You consider a compromise, and peace leaves immediately. No thunder, no warning, just a gentle but firm no. That sensitivity is not weakness, it is closeness. David experienced this kind of correction. The Bible says his heart smote him. God didn't need to expose him publicly. Conviction met him internally. Peter wept bitterly after denying Jesus, not because he was shamed by a crowd, but because a look from Jesus reached his heart. When God corrects you personally, it means he trusts you to respond without humiliation. Many want God's power, but few want God's precision. Precision requires attention, and attention requires relationship. You are no longer corrected only when things collapse. You are corrected when things barely begin to drift. Small attitudes, subtle pride, quiet disobedience, things others would never notice. But God does, and instead of resenting it, you listen. That is friendship. Correction is no longer condemnation. It doesn't push you away, it pulls you closer. You recognize God's voice, not as accusation, but as protection. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice," not occasionally, not loudly, but clearly. If God has been dealing with you about small things, if conviction comes quickly and gently, if you adjust without needing consequences, you are not being restricted, you are being trusted. Because God only corrects this personally those he walks with closely, and friends are corrected face to face. Number 5, you stop defending yourself and let God defend you. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. There was a time when being misunderstood bothered you deeply. You rehearsed conversations in your head. You felt the urge to clarify, justify, correct, and defend your intentions. Silence felt like loss. Being misjudged felt unbearable. But something has changed. Now, when people misunderstand you, peace remains. When your motives are questioned, you don't rush to fix the narrative. When assumptions are made, you don't feel compelled to correct them. Not because you don't care, but because you trust God to speak for you. The Bible says, "The Lord will fight for you." You need only to be still. Stillness is not weakness, it is confidence in divine defense. Jesus stood silent before his accusers, not because he lacked truth, but because truth does not need to argue. When Pilate questioned him, Jesus spoke only what was necessary, then stopped. He did not defend his innocence. He entrusted it to the Father. Friends don't protect their reputation alone. Some of you have been misunderstood by people you once explained everything to, and now you've stopped. Not out of bitterness, but out of rest. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your motives, or your journey with God. And here is the deeper truth. God often removes your ability to defend yourself so he can defend you himself. When you stop fighting for your image, God starts guarding your identity. You learn when to speak and when silence is obedience. You realize that clarity doesn't always produce peace, but surrender does. You no longer chase being understood. You remain faithful. David refused to kill Saul even when falsely accused. He said, "The Lord judge between me and you." That is not passivity. That is trust. If you have felt less reactive, less defensive, less eager to prove your righteousness, you are not becoming indifferent. You are becoming secure. Because when God becomes your defender, explanations become unnecessary. And only friends are confident enough to let God handle what they cannot control. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You are already known by God. And that is the rest of friendship. Conclusion. Friendship with God is rare, costly, and worth everything. Let this settle in your spirit, not as pressure, but as clarity. If you recognized yourself in these signs, it does not mean you are ahead of others. It means God has drawn you closer, and closeness always costs something. Friendship with God will strip you of shallow motivations. It will quiet the noise that once validated you. It will lead you into seasons where obedience is private, silence is long, and approval is scarce. And yes, at times it will feel lonely, but it is a holy loneliness, the kind that separates you from performance and anchors you in presence, the kind that trades crowds for communion, the kind that teaches you to walk without needing constant reassurance. Abraham walked it. Moses stood in it. David bled through it. Jesus embodied it. Friendship with God does not make life easier. It makes it truer. You may lose the urge to explain yourself. You may feel less understood by people. You may find that God corrects you more quickly, speaks more quietly, and asks you to trust Him more deeply than before. That is not distance. That is intimacy. God does not invite everyone into this level of relationship. Not because He is exclusive, but because not everyone wants the cost of closeness. Friends of God are not chosen for perfection. They are chosen for surrender. So if your faith feels deeper, quieter, heavier, but also steadier, if obedience has become natural rather than forced, if you no longer chase outcomes, applause, or control, you're not drifting, you're being entrusted. You were never called to merely believe in God. You are called to walk with Him, and walking with God as a friend is worth everything it takes. You also begin to carry God differently. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You react slower, but with greater discernment. You feel deeply, but you are not ruled by emotion. There is a settledness about you that cannot be explained by circumstances. People may not understand it, but they sense it. Friendship with God also refines your loves. You still care for people, but you no longer depend on them for validation. You still serve, but you are no longer driven by approval. You still give, but you are no longer depleted. Love becomes freer when it is no longer transactional. And perhaps the most beautiful change of all is this. You stop trying to become someone God will accept, and you start living as someone He already has. Obedience flows not from fear of losing Him, but from the joy of knowing Him. You are not striving for closeness, you are responding to it. This path will never be crowded. It was never meant to be. Friendship requires space, honesty, and surrender. Many admire God. Fewer follow Him. Even fewer walk with Him. But those who do discover a depth that cannot be replicated anywhere else. If this resonates with you, do not rush it. Do not explain it away. Do not minimize it. You are not imagining the weight, the quiet, or the cost. You are standing on holy ground, and holy ground always feels different beneath your feet. You are learning to walk with God, not ahead of Him, not behind Him, but beside Him. That is not religion, that is relationship, that is not performance, that is presence. And in the end, when everything else falls silent, when achievements fade and recognition disappears, This is what will remain. You are known by God, and you chose to remain with Him, not as a servant afraid to fail, but as a friend who learned to trust. That is the journey. That is the cost. And that is the quiet, unshakable reward of being a friend of God.